Hello and welcome everyone to part 1 of my 11-part video series covering Periodic Table, the Blueprint of Creation by Dr. Shivu Pilton. Aims of this video series include helping to communicate the ideas presented in Periodic Table, Blueprint of Creation. It is important to recognize that this book, and therefore this video series, will help provide evidence to corroborate Christianity, and that it hopes to blend the Christian viewpoint with the scientific one. So, in general, I see a lot of discussion where people say that science sort of disproves or invalidates or devalues Christianity, and I hope to discuss the ideas in this book in a manner that helps us to realize that the scientific viewpoint only helps, but it does not hinder the Christian viewpoint. So what is chemistry? Chemistry is the oldest branch of science, beginning with our forefathers who first cooked food with fire, to present day with a periodic table. The periodic table is a cornerstone of our understanding of the universe. As everything in the universe is derived from the elements of the periodic table, the Bible must therefore be corroborated by the periodic table. What I mean by that is that the periodic table sort of discusses and reveals the elements of the universe in an orderly way. And by doing so, it reveals a bunch of traits that these elements sort of have. So the Bible, right, if it is true, it must be corroborated by the periodic table. The periodic table must show some level of influence in the Bible, and the Bible must show some level of influence in the periodic table. This book and this video series will present a new way of viewing these periodic trends across the periodic table as they relate to the Bible. And also, it is important to note that the periodic table is a method of communication we have with extraterrestrial intelligence, including God. Because if an alien lands outside our planet, or lands outside our house tomorrow, what method or what similarities do we share with them, those aliens? Well, the periodic table is basically the only for sure similarity we share with them, because elements are same across the universe. It doesn't matter if it's a hydrogen molecule here on Earth or if it's a hydrogen molecule on Venus. The two are fundamentally the same. So periodicity is the idea of the periodic trends I discussed previously. Mendeleev, who created the periodic table, observed that when the elements of the universe are organized in order of increasing atomic weight, various trends become clear. These trends, as I've mentioned before, are called periodic trends. So these periodic trends sort of illustrate how hydrogen can go to helium, and hydrogen has a specific sort of properties. And there are other elements in this, along with hydrogen, that share these properties. Helium and other elements like helium exist, and they all share similar properties. And Mendeleev was able to figure out a way to organize the elements in a way that allowed for elements like hydrogen to be grouped with elements like hydrogen, and for elements like helium to be grouped with helium. Mendeleev was able to successfully predict the existence of elements, both their physical and chemical properties, in the periodic table similar to the Bible by using these groupings. The Bible and the periodic table, furthermore, also talk about groupings and families a lot. For instance, I hated reading this in the Bible, but every time in Matthew chapter 1, for instance, I would know for a fact that there's a huge chapter solely discussing the genealogy of Jesus. It goes from Adam to Noah to Abraham, finally David, then Jesus. And we see how Jesus' whole family line plays out. And the periodic table similarly has these groupings and periods, and both are separate from each other. And the family and grouping is a very important part of both of these sort of cornerstones and hallmarks of our modern civilization. So here's a periodic table, and as we see, here's a periodic table, and this is what we would call a group. It is a vertical arrangement of atoms or similar elements. So hydrogen, lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, caesium, and francium. This will be group 1A. Whereas here we have the final group: helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon, and organeson. And this is group 8A. So we have 8 major groups, and then we have transitional metals like scandium and copernicium. So these metals here are not really specifically grouped in a specific way because their atomic properties all differ, and each one is different from the others. So it's hard for modern scientists to group these in a reasonable and reliable way. Next we have lanthanoids and actinoids. These have separate groupings because of how their electrons work, but generally speaking they all fit under this umbrella right here. But because it would mess up the order and the structure of the periodic table, they're included in a little table underneath. So Genesis is the first book of the Bible. The word Genesis means origin or source. It is written by Moses and is generally considered to be an oral history that was passed down from generation to generation, then transcribed by Moses. This point right here is important because Moses would be a very learned man of his time. He knew how to read and write, and unlike his fellow Israelites, he was adopted by Pharaoh, whereas his fellow Israelites were slaves, and they didn't have the same access to education that he had. Therefore, Moses would know how to read and write, but these Israelites would not know how to do that. They relied on these oral histories to sort of stay connected to their culture and to God. So, knowing this, God knew that the Israelites would not know math and science to even Moses' level, much less to our level today. So God, when he had Moses transcribe these oral histories, he had Moses transcribed in a very basic manner, so that anyone could understand what was being conveyed in this message. So Genesis clearly declares God as the creator of heaven and earth, as well as the first being in existence. Each day, God created different beings and objects and concluded each day by saying it was good. After creating mankind, God blessed us to be fruitful, multiply, control the earth, subdue it, and to have dominion over all living things. Now, these days are all organized in a very basic manner, and they do not contain the specifics of how God is able to do each of these acts. They just say that God did them. And because of that, various scientists and various people throughout history have declared the Bible as false because they don't go into the specifics and they're very simplistic. However, it's important to understand that the book of Genesis had to be understood from 3000 BCE to 2000 AD. So because of that, it is easy to see how these books might be simplistic on a surface level, but they reveal a lot more about our society, our history, and God's creation. So it is the hope of this book and for this video series to help reveal some of the myths and to show how God did certain things. So our focus in this series is the first 11 chapters of Genesis. These are the chapters which go about discussing how God created earth, how God created man, in the first early days of mankind. So this video series will reveal the connections with the first days of creation and the periodic table to display that Genesis is consistent with modern science. Therefore, we must reinterpret Genesis to align with today's science. And that is the end of the first episode. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.